Okay, we're going to start by creating a table, a database table, and talking a little bit about table design. And to create the table, I'm going to go ahead and open up my XAMPP control panel, make sure that MySQL is started, make sure Apache is started, and then once that's started, I'm going to go ahead and go to the MySQL admin button here. It's right next to the stop button. That'll pull up my admin. I've got to put in my username and password. The username and password by default is secret. Root is the username. By default, the password is blank. I did change mine, so mine is secret password. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new table, which I'm going to use to update, delete, insert data into in my web application. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a scenario, and the scenario is that I'm going to have an auto dealership. The auto dealership is going to sell cars, and I want to have a way that people go to my website and they see all the cars, and then I can go in the background and I can change it so that the cars are updated, deleted, or added. So we'll start by just creating a cars database, and this is going to be about the simplest database I could come up with. So I'll hit the new button on the databases. I'm going to say that it's called AutoMall, and that's the name of my database. And really, when you create a database name, it should be all lowercase, at least in the MySQL admin, and there should be no spaces. If you put spaces, that causes a whole bunch of problems for programmers. They have to suddenly put little tick marks around things and square brackets. So just as a rule, make it easier on the programmers. Don't put any spaces on any of the names of your database objects. And so the database name itself should not have any names. It's better that you leave out any underscores also, but that's better than spaces. The collation is which alphabet system you're going to use to alphabetize the database, and I'm just going to go with the default. And what happens is if you go with the default, your database system will look at your computer and it'll figure out what location your computer is configured for. So mine is configured for United States English, and it'll use that collation. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hit create, and that creates a blank database. And now I can see that I've got a database over here in my nav bar. I can click on that and I can create a table. So it shows no tables found. I'm going to create a table called cars. Then I've got to decide how many columns I want. I can add some later or delete them. It's not a big deal. But what I want to do is I want to have a car ID so I can keep track of each individual car. I want to have a make, a model, and a price. So this is going to be a very simple table here. Just going to have 4 columns. So go ahead and hit go. And now I'm going to put in the names of my columns. Again, no spaces, no capitalization. The first one is almost always going to be ID. And then I'm going to have the make, the model, and then the price. And, I just remembered something, and that is that I want to put the picture of the database here. And so what I'm going to do is instead of having, I'm going to have make and model on one line. So I'll just put make and model. This isn't necessarily good practice, but it'll get the job done. And then I'll put image. This is where the JPEG or the GIF image is located on my hard drive. This will help me build a URL so that I can display images of the cars on my web page. Okay, the next thing I want to do is cover the data types, and the ID is, in this case, is going to be an integer. That is a number that's 1, 2, 3, or 4, but it's not 2.5 or something like that. And you can see that I've got this AI over here. That stands for auto increment. And by clicking on that, what will happen is that I won't have to worry about giving my cars numbers. They'll automatically get ID numbers, starting with the first one with 1, 2, 3, and so on. And so that saves me some inputting data. The make and model, that's going to be a string of characters. And it's going to vary from car to car. So I'm going to give that a variable character data type, which is varchar, or looks like varchar. and the length of that is going to be 255. That allows me to have very long make and model character strings. With the image, that's also going to vary. Every car is going to have a different image, and it's going to have a different name, and it's going to be different length of characters, and they're going to vary. So I'm going to put the maximum as 255. Then on the price, that is going to be a double. Well, if I want to have it whole dollars, like $2,000, then I could just use an integer. If I wanted to make it a decimal, like $2,000.50, then I'd need to have some other thing like a double or a decimal. But I'll just go ahead and make it whole dollars, and I'll just put int in there. So then we've got the next column, the default value. Every car is going to be unique. It's all going to have a different value, so I'm not going to have a default value in here. And then I'll scroll over it and look at the indexes. So in the indexes here, that is how you want the data to be stored in the database. And basically you're allowed to have one primary index, and that means everything in the database is stored in that order. So usually we have the ID be the primary, and that means that physically on your hard drive the first record is in the first place and the second record is in the second place, and they're all stored in that record. So if I want to look for the first ID, it's very easy to find it. It's at the front of the file. Make and model, that'll have a regular old index, and an image will have a regular index, and the price will have an index itself. So that's it for the indexes, and now I think that takes care of everything. I'll go ahead and hit save, and now I've got a basic structure. I can see it says cars over here, and I don't have any records in here. If I hit browse, it says no records. So I'm going to look for this insert tab here, and I'll click on that. Okay, so I'm going to enter some cars. I don't have to put the ID because that's auto increment. I'm going to have make and model. I'll have the Toyota Camry. I don't think there's an E there. And the image, that's going to be Camry.jpg. Then I'm going to have a price, 20,000. And then I'll have the next car, Honda Civic. That is going to be at civic.jpg. The price of that is about 18,000. Looks like I added one too many zeros. Now I can hit go here, and that will input those two items. Then I can insert a couple more. I'll go ahead and add, let me see here. So I'll put in here a Chevy Volt. I have no idea how much they cost. I'm just guessing. Oops, that should be Volt.jpg. Some price here. And then I'll put a Dodge Magnum. Oops. Now notice that I'm not capitalizing any of these images, and I'm not putting any spaces in them, because I'm definitely going to have to worry about the names of these images here when I get to the database and I actually want to show them on the page. Okay, so I've got my cars in the database. And I should just make a quick note, that is, suppose you don't like the way your database is named, you can go to this Operations tab here, and then you could change the name of your database. Well, this is actually changing the name of the table. I would have to click on the database itself, which is AutoMall, then go to Operations, and then I could rename the database here. I can also export my database, and I can do a quick export to SQL. If I export that, that will save it as automall.sql, and I can even take a look at that in my Notepad++, and you'll see that there's a bunch of SQL here that will recreate that database for me if I want to.